empowering you to build better lives. That's what we do. Welcome to today's empowerment podcast focused on empowering you to achieve your best version of yourself. Today, I'm here with Erin King. Erin, I am so excited to be here. I think your energy is going to power this whole room throughout this conversation. I'm so excited because I've read your book. It's marked up. We're ready to go. I've been on your website. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And Ryan, I'm just trying to match your energy, dude.
Let's
because
go.
You're on fire right now. We've been having all the fun. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And we first met when you did a broadcast, but I think you've done multiple for the company previously, but you and I were on one.
Yes.
And I walked into the room, green screened,
Yes.
while you were in full-fledged Erin mode. And I was just blown away with you and all that. So I started following you on Instagram. We've been in Insta buddies for a few months now, right?
Totally.
You just moved back moved here from California.
Yep. To Park City.
Now
so we're basically neighbors.
We're now
we
neighbors.
Gotta, like, crank some miles.
That's right.
We got to get out there.
We're ready to go.
Yeah.
So Erin, let me just go through a quick bio. And I can't cover it all. We wrote it out and there's way too much to cover. But we're going to get into your background. Okay. You are an entrepreneur. You've had a couple of different startups. You've had a digital media company, a .com site, which I'd love you to tell a little bit of that story. It's hilarious. You are known as the energy management expert, according to Amazon's book reviews. You have been featured on just about every magazine that I can find, Success Magazine, Write-Ups, Fortune. You've been on ABC, NBC. You've worked with companies like Disney. You are an energy officer, chief energy officer at Strike Point.
Yep.
So I want to understand a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
So credentials like crazy all around energy management.
Yep.
And that's you. What else are you? Give us a little, as a human being beyond the energy management guru. What else?
Oh my goodness.
What are you?
Well, thank you for that beautiful intro. And thanks for doing your homework and actually reading the book, because many podcast guests do not do this work.
For sure.
This is why he's the big guy. Look at this diligence.
That's it.
So, first and foremost for me, I am a family person through and through. I am one of 36 first cousins. All my grandparents are from Ireland, so I'm the granddaughter of immigrants.
Okay.
And we're really close. We're really thick as thieves. And my siblings, my nieces, my nephews, my immediate family, they're just my world. And at the end of the day, I think one thing that's really important to me is that I'm always keeping them first and foremost. And, being an entrepreneur is tough. You're grinding and you're working and you're hustling, and there's no you're on work or off work. It's just this whole blended journey, and it's beautiful and it's sweaty and it's terrifying and it's validating. It's all the things. Yeah. It's really easy to forget that work is never going to love you back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, who I am is someone who tries to always put family at the forefront. So that's
and you really say 36
my value.
Cousins.
First cousins, yeah.
Most of the time people talk about siblings.
Yes.
You talk about cousins, and I assume that has something to do with Irish blood.
Yes.
Is that so? You grew up in a very close-knit, extended family.
Yes.
Where did you grow up?
Annapolis, Maryland, on the East Coast.
Near the Naval?
Yes, Naval Academy. You got it. Yep. Okay. I was born 2 blocks from the Naval Academy.
Okay.
Yep.
Any relationship to it? Fathers, grandfathers?
Oh,
parents
yes. My grandfather served. Okay. Uncles. We have cousins that went through the Naval Academy. My brother actually was recruited to play lacrosse at Naval Academy. Okay. I played at Maryland.
Okay.
And
wait a sec. So you are a college athlete.
D1 athlete. Yes, sir.
Okay. This helps explain.
100 million years ago. I'm an old lady now.
No, but it's one piece of the energy part.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Okay. Yeah.
I love that.
Did you play college?
No, I was. I love sports. I was never good enough to play D1 at anything, but I loved football. I love.
Nice.
I love everything exercise now.
Yes.
But I was never talented enough to go on to D. Like my daughter Ava, who you met.
She is such a superstar.
Yeah, she's killing it.
She is killing it.
Yeah. So okay. So you
my
grew
dad.
up there.
Okay. Sorry. My dad was basically saying, "You're good at a sport." Title IX had just come out, 10, 15 years. And I was at a period where Title IX was really being enforced. And so there were college scouts and this and that. I remember my dad being like, if you could just get a scholarship to college, that would make my life a lot easier. And I'm like, my dad's my hero. So I'm like, Dad, I got you. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's double down. Like anything for dad. And I
Yep.
did. My dad played football at Georgetown and he was on scholarship. And so it's kind of like this, you know, no pressure, but like kind of a little bit of pressure, you know?
So what position did you play?
I was the face-off gal. So center, midfield, a lot of running. I was a lot fitter back then.
That's legit. That's a legit like competition right in the center of the field. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because on the East Coast, like lacrosse is so huge, but now it's out in Utah, it's in California. Anyway, so it's cool to see the sport grow.
So you grew up there. How many siblings do you have?
I had 2 siblings.
Okay.
And but my brother's in Boston, works for Google.
Okay.
He has 4 kids under the age of 8.
Wow.
And a dog.
Okay.
And I FaceTime him and it's like the Blair Witch Project. Like it's just, there's just kids and everything's moving and it's mayhem. And I'm sweating just watching him. And he just looks so happy. He's like, isn't this great? Like he's just meant to be a dad, you know?
That's perfect.
Yeah. And then my sister Shannon lives in Annapolis, still where we're from. Okay. She is pregnant with her second, who is due next month.
Okay.
So we're all getting together in 3 weeks.
So birth order?
I'm the oldest, obviously.
You're the oldest.
Loud, shouty, bossy, aggressive.
Fair enough. Second mom. And how did you grow up? So your dad, your mom, did you grow up in a loving family, very supportive, highly engaged, or distant, remote, disconnected?
Very, very blessed to report that we were very close. My mom and dad married for 40 something years.
Wow.
So they're best buds. Awesome. And I didn't realize growing up how rare that was to feel safe, to feel that when someone says they're going to be at the school to pick you up, that they're actually there.
Yep.
That, you know, that we never had to worry about like food or, you know what I mean? So I feel really blessed. And I do come from a family of very high achievers. Okay. So a lot of like doctors and lawyers and big personalities. And so, you know, it's a catch-22, right? Yeah. Because in my house, achievement kind of equaled affection a little bit. Okay. Like everyone's loving. As long as you know, like bees were not allowed. Like score the goal. And it's good stuff, but there's a shadow side to it that I've learned as I've gotten older. Maybe a little more going on there.
Would you change it though?
No.
Yeah. No. Yeah. That's
how about you?
Part, right. So
you would change your.
I grew up with very few expectations other than be good people. Like my parents were very big on be good people. Not big on neither went to school, university. My older brother was the first to go to college.
Oh wow, that's great.
So we were very much self-made, but we came from a very loving family, which is winning the lottery totally most of the way there. So
100%.
But having parents that have expectations of you, I think is important. I always deal with that with my kids sometimes. Like, we want expectations, but we don't. But we actually do, and I think we all want expectations because we have them of ourselves, even if we don't want to admit it. So
correct.
Okay, so you're East Coast. You go to school East Coast. Yep. But the first thing I read in your book, which I want you to tell me about, is your entrepreneurial venture fundraising for your idea on the West Coast, out in Newport. So how did you go East Coast to West Coast? What took you out there, and what was the journey along the way?
So my dad always told me that if you could learn how to sell, you would never go hungry. Yeah. So he was he's a diehard sales guy, like through and through.
He's a sales guy. Okay.
Yeah. And so my first job out of college was 100% commissioned sales rep. So 22 years old. I was slinging TV ads in Baltimore, Maryland. Cold calling people out of the yellow pages to physically come into their office with a printed out PowerPoint where I would then show them about broadcast television and they would write me a paper check. None of these things are relevant in 2024. Not a thing of these even exists.
For sure.
But I got hung up on about 100 times a day, every day for about 3 years.
So good for
just
you, right?
Straight rejection from like 22 to 25. So any ego, I got this figured out.
Was it tech sales? Was it, sorry, what were you selling?
TV commercials, broadcast television.
Broadcast television.
Yes, and then I would sell the commercial and then I would, I couldn't, so the budget. Like you would get this, you get a commission. And then if you could get them to make the TV commercial for even cheaper, you would get more commission. So I would star in the TV commercials. I was an old lady. I was a babysitter. I was like scrubbing grout on the floor of a shower, being like, Groutle, get out, the whole thing. And it was a great education, great experience. So we ended up expanding the company. I was number 1 in the company when I was very young.
Awesome.
We started expanding it, and I asked for more money from my bosses, and they turned me down. And they promoted another guy ahead of me because his golf game was better, and he was kind of in the boys' club. And so I kind of Jerry Maguired and freaked out and was like, I'm out of here. Who's coming with me? And no one was coming with me.
Did the fish go with you?
No one. Not even the fish.
Not even the fish?
Not even the fish. I was 24 and I was so dumb. Like I didn't know anything. So no one came, but I got a job selling software and I was the West Coast rep. So I fly back and forth from Baltimore, West Coast. And there was one day I had an appointment in Newport Beach, California.
Okay.
And I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, Annapolis, Maryland. So, I'm driving in this like PT Cruiser down the PCH and I come around this corner and I think I'm like really doing it. I had like Kanye blaring before he was canceled, the whole thing. And I'm driving and I see the huge, big ocean just open up. And I was like, I got to live here.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah. So I told my family, I'm going to go out for 1 year. I was a surfer back east, so surfer in California. I'm like, I'm just going to surf for a year, have a blast, and I'll be back.
Okay.
That was like 18 years ago. So I just fell in love.
Never looked back.
Never went back.
Stayed in the OC area.
Yeah, Newport,
least, right?
Newport, California. I go back for birthdays, Christmas, once a quarter. But it's a lifestyle that I love. And I'm excited to live in Park City now too, because there's something about it out west. It's a different world out here.
Yeah. I always say, like, to me, the best of both worlds would be exactly what you're doing. The mountains and the ocean.
Yeah. It's not too shabby. Feel pretty lucky.
So you grew up surfing.
Yeah.
And I started surfing about 10 years
ago. You
Yeah,
did? Amazing.
I've got a surf club. I've got my guys. We go a couple times a year.
Where do you guys go?
We're terrible.
Oh, I doubt it.
No. We mostly Mexico, but we've been North Shore. We've been Costa Rica. We used to travel around, and now we've just come back to Sayulita. There's a great way to meet that area. And so we'll go there a couple times a year. And I read in a book, it's called Barbarian Surf.
Of course.
If you've read it. So he says a line in there, if you don't learn to surf when you're a child, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to catch a wave. Oh, so that's our whole group, right? Wow. So we're all Utah native guys.
That's awesome though.
But we're learning how to surf. We love it. And so I always say the perfect world is what you're doing now. So you get a ski, you get a surf. Jerry Maguire, right? I get a surfer ski.
Totally. I want to talk more surf talk with you after this because I want to hear about like what kind of board did you ride, which exact brakes, the whole.
Still like the lowest is like a 7.2. I can't do smaller.
The shorter,
than 7.2. So I'm not skilled enough. So okay, so you go out, and while you're out there, you're selling, and at some point you decide, listen, I have got this great killer idea, which by the way, I think it's a killer idea.
So did the investors.
For sure. But tell us the story. No, but tell us the story because this is the best part of the book. The whole book's great, but you open it up right.
Yeah. Well, okay. So there was like a company called the Dollar Shave Club. Did you ever hear of this?
We know. Yeah, absolutely.
Michael Dubin.
Yeah,
so when he sold it to Unilever for $1 billion with a B,
it's crazy.
He was my age, at the time when he sold it. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm out here pounding the pavement, working hard. Right. Why not me? Right. Delusional dreams of entrepreneurship. So I was like, what could I do that's like shipping dudes razors, but for women? I'm like, what do I never have on hand? So I was like, oh my God. Yeah. My poor boyfriend, I just went out to the grocery store trying to hide under a magazine, buying me tampons, hooking it up. And no one wants to go to the store and buy that. It's embarrassing. No. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be the world's first tampon billionaire. This is going to happen. Yeah. So I spent 18 months and I'm like getting all the stats and stories, research, Chinese shipping policy, FDA regulations, medical device stuff, the whole thing. I'm like, this is going to crush. Yeah. So I get this meeting at this big monster shiny conference table at a VC firm in Newport Beach, California. Yeah. And it's about 12 dudes look just like you. Like, just like good looking older, guys that like know their stuff. And I am by myself in this room with a monster, gigantic Mount Everest pile of tampons. And they're all looking at me like, what is happening, right?
It made a statement.
It made something.
For sure.
So I started doing the pitch and I practiced it and rehearsed it. And you know how it is, when you're in sales, you're passionate about it. You're prepared. You're on fire. Yeah. And it's not until someone else's response to you or rejection of you that makes you stutter step and stop in your tracks. And you just start to lose that confidence, right? And that sweat starts to form on your upper lip. And I remember I was in the middle of this great, basically my projections for the next 3 years. And this one guy named Todd, because there's always a Todd. I call him 210 Todd.
Especially in Newport.
Oh, in Newport. Right? Oh, all day. Yeah. These guys came in for CrossFit.
There's always a Todd,
always
Kathy.
A Todd in Newport.
There's always a Todd in Newport.
Driving their Ferraris. Yeah.
Her husband's name's Todd.
Oh, is it?
He from
See,
Newport?
It's always a Todd.
Yes. Yes. We got it.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Totally nailed it.
Well, I'm sure your Todd is a lot nicer. But yes, that is.
Her Todd's great.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And he wouldn't have rejected the idea.
So I'm talking, I just looked at him and he looks like he just looks nauseous. Yeah, he's like, if this girl keeps talking about tampons, I'm out.
Yeah, he's out.
And in that moment, I just froze. I just panicked. And I was like, what am I going to do? I got to get out of here. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. I'm like, I worked so hard, but this is stupid. Like, who do I think I am?
Yeah.
And in the moment, he took the time to take this tampon and chuck it across the table. Another guy, the world's first game of like grown man hot potato, tampon breaks out. I'm like, this never happens on Shark Tank.
Right.
I'm miserable.
Totally
like,
a meltdown.
Yeah. And then it kind of took me back to my childhood, actually, where if you're an adult and you find yourself at a moment of deep insecurity, you think about moments when you were a kid where you got shot down. Yeah. And for me, when I was a kid, I was pretty much exactly like this, big and loud. And I wasn't like the same small, safe middle school game. I was bullied so bad in middle school, like awful. And it was before the internet, so I can't even hold a conversation about that. But I came home from school one day and my grandmother, Nana, who's 90, last week actually. Nana's 90, she's looking good, she's hanging in there. I need to get her some new skin product.
We'll get you some.
But Nana said, it's always, she goes, it's better to be someone's shot of whiskey than everyone's cup of tea. And I remember she said that. It's better to be you.
Irish whiskey of all,
and not be for everybody. Exactly. And so I kind of flashed back to that room in that moment. And I'm like, I know exactly what Nana would do. And I just grabbed the tampon out of Todd's hand. And it was my microphone. It was my pointer. And they stopped laughing. They started leaning back. And an hour and a half later, I walked out of there and I had a term sheet for 7 figures from one of the guys. All 11 said no, but only one. I only needed one.
Yeah.
One said yes. And we were featured in Forbes. Yeah. We had like 25,000 women subscribe and it was off to the races. But it was this critical moment that I think is really important for anyone in sales, anyone who's an entrepreneur, where like there is a crossroads that in those critical seconds can define the entire road that you have ahead of you. So be prepared, be on deck, because Nana's always my girl. Yeah. I always have Nana. Like whenever I don't feel secure or comfortable, I'm like, Nana has so much confidence, so much just joie de vivre. Like what would she do? Yeah. So it's a really important, like, I don't know if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have someone that you can look to, if you don't have a family person, like find or borrow someone else's, because in the moment you need it is not the time to think about the game plan. You got to have someone on deck that you can sort of borrow that courage and sort of channel a response that can put the situation back in your favor. Because otherwise, you work so hard to be there. Yeah. Whether you're selling new skin products or selling anything, you deserve to be there, but you have to believe it first. Yeah. Because no one's going to do it for you.
So you said, I'm kind of a big deal. Right? So here's your quote, because as you're telling the story, I'm kind of a big deal, just like Todd, right? So, and then you say here, I know. Thinking like this might be insane, delusional, cray-cray to the max, but you know what else it was? It was audacious. So audacious, I had to look up the definition because I use audacious all the time. I mean, it's part of our vernacular, but audacious. Yeah. Define it in your words. What is being audacious and being a big deal? What is it? Yeah. Like, how do you define being audacious?
Yeah. It's kind of like the older, bolder, sassier cousin of confidence.
Okay.
So it's daring greatly, which sounds great. Who doesn't want to dare greatly? Brene Brown. Great. But daring greatly, even if it might shock or even offend. And that's where we kind of pull the brake. We're like, ooh, not in this culture. Yeah. We don't want to offend or shock anybody, you know? But the truth is, when you look back through history, I mean, there's a million examples. No one ever made SHIT happen without ruffling a few feathers. And so the whole idea of audacity with this book is like, instead of us being surprised, we should prepare ourselves. Yeah. Like, of course someone's going to hate it. Yeah. Of course we're going to get shot down. Yeah. Yeah. But when you prepare for it, you get a little more confidence, audacity, reserves going so that you can get that one yes that you need out of a table full of no.
So replay that experience. It was success in the end. Yeah. But I could see that fork going one of two ways very easily. And had you not been prepared, to your point, with that moment of what would Nana do or say, very easily you could have shrieked back and said, okay, I'll take my pile of tampons and go home.
Yes, right? I mean, exactly.
Or maybe leave them there, right? But it would have just been crawl out of the room. And so the point of being prepared with that moment, is that part of the big recipe? I mean, you talk about superpowers, which I want to get to in a moment because I love the principle. But is that part of the audacity or understanding you're a big deal? That's part of the recipe?
It's part of the recipe. Yeah. I call it caping up so you don't cop out.
Okay.
Caping up so you don't cop out. Because every one of us, and you have an amazing network of people, right?
Yeah, we have great.
You know someone that when you can't galvanize buy-in at scale for your enterprise, you know there's like 2 or 3 guys or gals, and you're like, they're so good at that. Yeah. They just know what to say. Yeah. Or there's one of those high empathy stakes moments where it's a PR crisis
Yeah.
or someone,
Yep.
crossed the line and it's
Yep.
like, oh, this is going to
Yeah.
take some navigating. 2 or 3 people that are
Yeah.
like the best at that. We have these superheroes in our everyday
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't be yourself. It's just that we check ourselves to know
Yeah.
that we're not the best at everything.
Yeah.
Like, I know there's a couple of things I rock at
Yeah.
and way more than I don't.
Right.
And so you want to think through, like, in your life,
Yeah.
who are the people
Yeah.
that are great at personal branding, great at dealing with rejection, great at raising money, great at organizing, great at bringing to market,
Yeah.
great at, process, whatever. So I have these people like written out, which sounds crazy, but I have my personal board of directors, right? I have these people written out that are the best at what they do. And I have them on deck because I
At
come up.
certain skills.
At
You're
certain
saying at
skills.
certain skills.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, the reason I developed this for myself and it's worked really well is because I found that when I read, I'm a big, just like you, self-help book junkie. I read like 3 books a week. We don't have a TV in our house. So I'm a voracious English major. I love to read. I just love it. And a lot of the books I was reading were kind of like, just push through.
Yeah.
Power, kind of like Nike, just do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, but what if you're not ready? What if you don't know how? Like, how do I cross the confidence chasm?
Yeah.
So for me, it's channel the superpowers of the ones that you admire. Don't not be yourself. Just borrow it just to get you across that moment where you're doubting yourself into a dark hole. Like, it's just to get you, just till you find your footing, and then you can shine and find your step and get your rhythm. But it's that, to your point, it's that crossroads that where we stumble, and then there's so much unrealized potential that we'll never know, like what could have been.
I love
it's just a
that.
simple little tool that I used it yesterday.
Yeah.
Literally, we were we're literally doing a whole new venture, and I was like, what am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. And one of my girlfriends is an amazing, she's like billionaire with a B entrepreneur. She's big time. I can't say who she is, but she's amazing. And I called her and I was like, I feel like I'm out of my league. And she was like, listen to me right now. And just like,
You can do it.
Yes.
Yeah,
and then when I went into my meeting, even
Yeah.
my hands were shaking on the table. I was like, what would this gal do?
Yeah.
And for the first 5 minutes, my whoop scores were in the red. My heart was racing.
Yeah.
But then, you kind of get your stride. And about 10 minutes in, my speech slowed down, my heart rate slowed down, my meanness shone through, and the meeting, it went great. But it could have been a dumpster fire.
For sure.
It's that simple.
For sure.
It's so little.
People think it's such a, so there are 2 thoughts that come to mind.
Yeah.
One is, have you read Will Smith's biography?
No.
Okay, you have to read Will.
Okay.
So in Will, so he talks about method acting.
Okay.
And at one point, so he and Jada are going through their thing. By the way, Park City roots, right? So they have
I didn't
places
know that.
there.
Interesting.
So,
Head over.
yeah. So now all these stories are coming through because there's a whole series of
Okay,
work.
cool.
But he's sitting there talking about where he was playing, and I forget which character. I think it was Ollie. I believe it was Ollie as he was going through. I may be wrong. There are multiple stories in there.
Okay.
But he starts to take, through method acting, you take on the character, right? And you spend months and months and even years learning this character. And at one point, Jada's like, no more method acting. Like you've taken on too many of those person's characteristics that is messing up our relationship.
Wow.
And I started to think, I read that. I was on holiday somewhere and I read that and I thought, could I method act Elon Musk? like could I method act X, Y, Z for X, Y, and Z capability in innovation, in empathy, in whatever.
Yep.
And I think that idea is so powerful of method acting around, meaning, identify your role models and take those on, which one of mine for me is Tony Robbins, right? So,
love him.
So Robbins is such a powerful guy.
Totally.
And he teaches the principle when you walk in a door, it's like, boom, chest out, head up, walk in, like, and know that you should be there. Whatever room you're walking into, you should be in that room.
Yep.
And it's the difference between, there's all kinds of science studies that will say the success rate of that close or whatever you're going into of the meeting, when you go in knowing, believing you have a place in that room, the success is like 3x greater success rate just by knowing and achieving because the way we go into the room.
It's so good.
Exactly what you're saying.
The method acting is
the core
interesting.
principle.
I love that
it's
parallel.
It's an interesting idea, right?
Because, it's a little bit controversial. It's a little audacious, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we're told never be anybody else, always be yourself.
Right.
And yes,
Right.
authenticity is everything, of course. But it's just those, I don't know, but it's like the start. It's like the art of the start. There's that book, right? It's like you just need to get down the hill a little bit till you get your confidence going. And so, like,
you
for
said
example,
fake it till you make it. Isn't that where we got?
Well,
you said in your book, page 87, page 179, don't be afraid to rent someone else's radness until you discover and develop your own. In other words, fake it till you make it. So
rent someone's radness.
179.
Rent. Good job, you.
Listen.
No, it is true though. I mean, so I have a girlfriend who's an amazing keynote speaker, and she never gets stage fright. You're an amazing speaker. I've seen you on stage. But you know, when you're like backstage, you probably don't get this because it's your company, but when you're being hired for a referral or a client, like when Buck brought me in, I was so nervous talking to your team because Buck vouched for me. And so it's like, I can't let Buck down, right? So it's the stakes are higher when you're brought into these things. So I get terrible stage fright. I just did a gig in Cancun last week. It was like 10,000 people and my hands were shaking so bad. I was plotting ways to run out of the room. Like I've done this 100,000 times.
I was going to say that's amazing.
It's my full-time job, but my heart, I mean, my whoop is literally like you just ran a marathon. So one of my girlfriends is an amazing keynote speaker, and she literally does not get stage fright at all. And one time she told me that her secret is that whenever you're backstage and you're freaking out, and I don't care if you're doing a Zoom call with your Monday night team call or whatever, you're just not feeling yourself, right? She said that she walks on that stage and she reminds herself, she assumes that everyone in that room is just there to play with her. It's just there to have fun. They all want her to be there. They want her to achieve success because if she doesn't, it's going to be awkward for them. And they don't want to feel awkward. So for me, that lands, right? And so there's these moments, like you said, right? Where it's like, but I remember this happened to me last week and I thought about my girlfriend and I'm like, I'm just going to assume that everyone wants to play with me. Everyone wants to be here. And sure enough, I was like, she would just walk out and just dive in. And then, you know, the nerves calm down and then you stand in service and then you're in the zone and you're good. It's just that start, man, that can really trip you up. You know?
Get there. No, exactly. And I think to your point, you always see these people. I was speaking at an event in Dallas, and so I had just come back from Japan. I had no idea who Mel Robbins was. So I'm sitting there next to Mel and Brandon, Motivation Manifesto. Brandon
Burchard. I just met him 2 days ago.
Oh, you did?
He's the man.
Okay, Motivation Manifesto. Have you read his?
Yeah, of course. I'm a huge Brendon Burchard fan.
Such a great. So I'm sitting between both of those. And they're talking, they know each other.
Oh, yeah.
I have no idea who either of them are.
The biggest speakers in the game, arguably.
No, exactly. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going on for, speak about industry stuff. And they're going on to be the motivational speakers. And so I'm like, so what are you guys doing? And Brandon says, well, I wrote Motivation Manifesto. And I was like, you're kidding me. That changed my son's life's trajectory in sixth grade.
Wow.
This kid, he's actually a very jovial, fun-loving kid. And one day he comes home and he says, I want to go for student council. And I'm like, buddy, like at the time, have you seen Modern Family?
Yes.
You know, the Luke?
Okay, yes.
So that was Cole growing up. Like this. And Allison's like, you want to do what? And he says, I want to do it. And he said, Dad, I read Motivation Manifesto. So I read it, and that was his inspiration. So I'm like, you're kidding me. So he's talking. And then Mel Robbins, she had just released the 5-second rule, right? And so she's like, well, I have this rule, this 5-second rule. And I'm like, oh, tell me about that. She's like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's go. So her secret was, I'm going on stage, 5, 4, 3, 2, countdown.
Right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and she walks out. And she's like, and it just gets my mind primed. And I was like, Tony Robbins primed.
Yeah.
So it's all about getting there, getting ready, being in the right spot. So your moment of primed as you walk in is then what?
On stage or just in life?
No, on stage. Like what when you need to go do it.
For speaking?
Yeah, for speaking.
It's they announce your name and you feel like you're going to die.
Yeah.
And you want to run.
Yeah.
Because your biology is telling you that an army of people is facing you to kill you, literally. And I just, my phrase I say to myself is, everyone wants to play with me, and thank you, God, for this opportunity. Like, tell me what I need to do to serve. And I just say, thank you, 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 hello.
And that's how it goes. And
so
you're launched.
It's just, so it's the gratitude energy.
Okay.
Because, they always say, like, you can't stand in, like, gratitude and fear at the same time, right? So it's like, it has to pick one.
Yeah.
So I try to shout the fear away with gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Hello. Every time.
So I've heard that a lot. You can't be fearful and grateful at the same time. They're almost like juxtaposed emotions. And so if you lean into one, you can't have the other one. So you're embracing that emotional. which, by the way, I just took your test on your app, which
Oh,
we're going to get into that in
okay.
a moment. And it asked the question of, do you generally feel more fearful or more? So we'll get into that.
I want to
in a
guess what
second.
you are too. I think I know. But anyway.
I haven't finished it, so I think I have 8 questions left,
Okay.
and then I'll get my results.
Okay.
So let's keep going down this thing. So you're out new, and we're going to walk through this. So you found a company. You go into that. Where I want to get to, Erin, with you is you seem like an extremely confident person to begin with. So what some will say is, well, yeah, but Erin's always been, she was a D1 athlete. She was a loved child. She was a successful salesperson. She was a successful startup. She raised a bunch of money. When did you doubt? When have you doubted in your life? Because I think there's a story behind that to where you are today.
There is. So great family, amazing. And when you come from a really tight Irish Catholic family, it's kind of like in the old days where there's a clan and it's tribal and no one really like leaves or veers off the path. Yep. So I am the only person in my entire family to live on the West Coast.
Okay.
So everyone's on the East Coast. They hang out all the time. Like a Sunday dinner is everyone. And everyone's in everyone's business.
Wow.
And everyone goes to the same church. And everyone's kids go to the same school. And so there's this black sheep energy about living out here on the West Coast. Now, of course, Nana was the only one who approved because she was like, well, for the love of God, how do you think we got here in the first place? Yeah. We came from Ireland.
Somebody
we went west.
had to go.
You go west. Yeah. That's what we do. And I was like, thank you. You know? But there is an element where, you know, so my husband and I are, we don't have children. So everyone else has like 7 to 10 to 50.
Right.
So there's a lot of, I have a lot of insecurity at a family level where, you know, you're kind of, when you're going against the grain. Mm-hmm. I also am the first woman in my family ever to build my own wealth. Like my mom had to ask my dad for money. Grandma had to ask, Nan had to ask Brenda. Like back and back and back. Like we have a graveyard in Ireland. It's like 400 years old. The house is called the Rock House. It's in Maville, County Donegal in the north of Ireland. Okay. And I don't need 23andMe. Like there's my 23andMe. It's my entire, and forever, there's never been a woman that in my entire family that's ever owned a business, made their own money. Like, so I feel this tension of, you know, I don't have a lot in common. The older, the more you're like, that you rise up to your goals, you sort of lose connection. So when I go home, I have to kind of get a little bit like, sort of not smaller, but sort of, you know, I don't have a lot in common to talk about with the thing that's local. And so I get insecure about that. And then I feel a lot of pressure as well because my nieces are all watching me, you know, because no one else is doing anything like this. They all have the corporate job and the steady Eddie. And my dad worked at the same company for 35 years. My brother's been at Google his entire career. Like I've done 3 ventures. One was a failure. One I barely broke even. One I finally figured out. Sold it 2 years ago. And now my 4th venture and I'm starting a 5th one. Like I don't have anything in common. So there's an insecurity element that permeates me at full circle. But you asked me the most important thing to me in my entire life. My value system is my family. So the whole world can be following me on Instagram, standing ovations, good job, you're so confident. But then I come home and I'll feel like, man, there's something wrong with me, you know? So it's this weird, like.
That's interesting,
You know, so that's where I get insecure sometimes. And they love me and they're great. Sure. And they're going to hear this and be like, oh, you're so dramatic. But, you know, my parents are boomers. Like, they're allergic to like feelings and excuses. And like, you know, it's like, my dad would always say, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Like, rub some dirt on it. You know, and it's great. Love that. And there's a shadow side to that superpower.
No,
you know?
For sure. I always say our greatest strength is our greatest weakness, right? And that, in others, our superpower, which I want to get into next because I love the principle of superpower, the superhero, the superpower. But I think you're right. I think our greatest strength, in my view, typically is our greatest weakness.
I think so
at the same time. So
what
your family, your support. I'm too kind. I'm joking.
You're like, I'm just too handsome. It's
the
so
office.
hard.
It's the office. It's like what is Michael Scott's
so
like?
It's so annoying.
No. I think one of my greatest strengths is loyal. I'm a highly loyal person, which makes me slower to. In business, you got to make moves and you got to sometimes make hard moves. And when you're an extremely loyal person, it's hard to sometimes make the right decisions when you're dealing with, you know, human-based decisions. So those are the types of things that I find that to be the case and all over the place. But I think on an insecurity basis for me, and I talk about this a lot, I have a great story. I won't go into it because it's too much, but I was watching a really toxic post. I was literally like watching it was on Instagram, and I was sitting there getting my pants tailored at this great Too Tiny tailor shop. If you ever need a tailor,
I do, actually.
I got one for you.
Great.
And I'm reading this post and I'm like, this is so toxic, right? And I don't like to use the word toxic, but it resonated with me. And then I started to think about it. I was like, listen, I've never put myself out there. Like, at least the guy's putting himself out there and like what he really believes. And now I disagree with what he believed. But then so I went home that night and I was like, I just started writing, right? I'm like just writing my kind of story.
Yeah.
And I'm going, because I wanted to capture it anyways at some point for my kids and like what are my belief systems?
Yeah.
So I'm writing this. I literally went almost all night, woke up the next morning, went again. And there was one chapter that I knew I was missing. And it was chapter number 1. And chapter number 1 was titled Not Enough. Right? That's for me, when you ask me what's my biggest insecurity in my entire life, it's been I'm not enough. And I don't know where that starts from because I had loving parents. I had this, but you talk about college athletics or athletics. I was like never good enough to do that well enough. And so that's just fueled everything for me. That's my greatest weakness, but I think it attributes to a strength, which is I'll go do whatever I have to do to prove that wrong.
Raise the bar.
Right?
Push the limit.
And
keep
so
going.
it's a weakness that becomes a greatest strength. And so when we get into superpowers, I want you to talk with us a little bit about, because you talk about superpowers. We talked about superheroes. I'm a huge believer in superpowers. Tell us a little bit about your philosophy on superpowers.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's really, by the way, very vulnerable to admit. And I think that that not enoughness feeling, just real quick before we move on from that, I think that your superpower is so important to identify because it's the only antidote that we possess to counteract that.
That's
right?
true.
Like when you lean into that, you know. So actually, Brendan Burchard, bringing it up because I just met him 2 days ago and I was not cool about it. I was such a super fan. I was talking a mile a minute. He was so kind and generous. Now we're buddies and we're DMing and like he's cool. But I was like, I love you so much. You're so amazing. And I was like, oh, I'm doing that super fan girl thing. But he had an episode on his podcast about romantic relationships. And he was talking about that the number one thing that he has found to work for him and his wife is that they will spend time on their walks talking about the other person's superpower. And that the reminder to remind someone of their superpower that you see in them is when you hear them voicing the self-doubt, the not enoughness, the falling short, the negative self-talk. I call her my inner Regina George, like from Mean Girls, right? And so it was funny because I heard my husband, we just moved to Park City and it's moving to a new town and all this. It's wild, right? And I heard him kind of doing this like negative self-talk and we were going for a walk and I just stopped.
This is Hartman.
Hartman, my husband.
Okay,
Hartman. And good memory. And I just said, you know what I love about your superpower? He's like, what? I was like, you are so concerned about how your actions make everyone else feel. And that is a really beautiful, conscientious, he's from the South. Like, you're very conscientious. And I really appreciate that. Like, you're very like respectful and conscientious. The shadow side of that is that sometimes you put everyone else's ahead of you and you don't even know what you want because, so full circle, I think that the superpower conversation is really important, both from an internal energy, but also a relational energy component, right? Identifying yours, but also identifying in your partner or the one that you love, because we need that. We need to see ourselves the way the people that love us see us.
Yeah. You talk about energetic compatibility in your next bucket of work. So that's what you're referring to is how do we relate and how do we build upon and or remind each other of that superpower.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, everyone says like energy is contagious. And it is.
No, it absolutely is.
So we actually spent a year, I hired a team of PhD researchers that are way smarter than me. And we spent a whole year, we interviewed thousands and thousands of people. And these people had all different energy levels, different life satisfaction scores. So like how successful do you feel? Are you excited about the future? That kind of stuff. And what we found was that in terms of how contagious energy actually is, we found that on a scale from 1 to 7 is the scale, right? So 7's highest energy, you're fully charged, ready to rock, get me on stage with Mel Robbins, let's go. 1 is you're burnt out, you need to go on a surf trip and just lay under a palapa and do nothing, right? So 1 to 4 is lower energy, 5 to 7 is higher energy. And on your personal energetic battery scale, we found that people who had lower energy, when they spent time with someone who rated their battery at a 5 to a 7, 68% of those low vibe people, we then re-asked them, where's your battery? 68% of them moved into that 5 to 7 range. They moved into the higher energy. And the flip side, people who are high vibe, 54% of them moved into a lower when they hung out with someone whose energy they did not admire. So it goes both ways. And so whether you're leading a massive organization that's global, or you're just trying to have a little more influence in your household, right? The energy we're transmitting whether we like it or not. Like energy never lies, right? It's our first language. And so we have to start with our self-talk, our superpower, our atta girl, our let's go here before we can have any hope of influencing our teams, our families, anyone else. So it's like, it's kind of that whole put your energetic oxygen mask on first. Easier said than done, right?
No, for sure. So if you're going into that, so you talk about your study, and I want to get into this, the big energy exam, and I literally just started looking at that today. But you're talking about, so we get into a room, your energy level's at a 6, you walk in, I'm at a 2, we start talking, I benefit, my energy level now is maybe a 4 or 5, but because you're sitting with me, your energy might have gone from a 6 to a 5 and met me where it is, right?
It was a transfer.
And so I guess, is there a recipient? Is there a beneficiary? And do you have to be ready for that when you go into an environment, understanding that, like, I can imagine you've spoken in front of, I've spoken in front of crowds where you walk in and it's like, I have got to catalyze 8,000 people in this room because they've been sitting on their butts and 80% of their blood is now in their backside instead of their brain. And I've got to somehow bring all that up. Can one person power 8,000? The answer is
Tony Robbins.
Totally. And it's totally, it's totally
when in doubt,
possible.
The answer is Tony Robbins.
So, but I'm a total believer in that idea that energy is contagious. And my question, I guess, is if you're a high energy person, so to me, you just are on a Richter scale or whatever, the energy scale that's just generally higher. You're a 5 to 7. I bet your average is somewhere there where somebody's average might feel a little bit lower. How do you, if your energy's lower, how do you bring that up? Or can you bring it up? Or is it kind of like, you talked about it as, I can go through the quote, but you talk about it as a beta state and measuring your state of energy somewhere. But how do you bring that up? If we're just generally, part of the people listening to this crowd will say, man, these guys are hyperactive weirdos. And actually, sometimes people look at high energy people and think, these guys are a bunch of idiots.
Okay, I love this. All right, so let's break it down. So big energy does not mean being like Ryan or being like Erin, okay? So big energy is not about matching.
You're a lot more energy than me, by the way.
You're pretty high energy. I don't know,
decent energy, but I think you double my energies.
I don't know. I think thank you. I don't know. Because sometimes people say, like, you have a lot of energy, but there's a weird energy in how they say it, where I'm like,
as we're
is that
talking
a compliment?
about, it's absolutely important.
I think so too.
I love it. Yeah.
Thank you. But so it's not about matching or mimicking anyone else's energy style. Sure. It's about knowing when you are at your essence, like fully charged, at your best, ready to rock, like knowing what that looks like for you is super important. But your question is, how do we power up? Like, how do we get more energy?
That's right.
Okay. So everyone wants to know how to get more energy. Now, if we think about it, the conversations around energy are typically around health and wellness. So your supplements, your sleep, your water, all the things. I kind of call it the diet, unwind, hydrate. I think it's but I get pushed back on that phrase because some people are like, well, not everyone knows, but it depends on where you're.
In today's world, I think you should know.
Right.
You should know.
And then on the other side, over here, you have energy conversations that are more about, vibrational manifestation, vision casting, plug into the source, right? But I think there's a conversation that's missing in the middle. And that conversation in the middle is, I think, where we have all these different energetic options when it comes to the people and the places and the projects.
No, that's a great point.
That give us chargers or drainers, right? And so the problem is, when we're feeling low energy, we typically do one of three things. We will either, and I'm the worst offender at this, we will either power through, which is just white knuckle it. My dad, Tommy G, suck it up, Sally, just keep going, power through. And that's great. And you can power through to an extent until that's when you get burnout. That's when no one recognizes you. Your vibe gets so low that even if you're putting all this effort, your energy is sabotaging you. Like, you can make 50 cold calls.
Yeah.
But if your vibe is low, you're not going to get one yes, right?
Fair.
So we respond to energy, not effort, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you power through. Okay, that only works until you can't anymore physically.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing we do is we power down, right? We recharge. We have weekend culture. We recalibrate, and that's great. And if you're a billionaire, you can afford to do that forever. But most of us can't do that forever. So that's another short-term solution. So we power down until we can't anymore fiscally. Finally, we power up. And powering up is great. However, in the Instagram world, wellness overwhelm is very real. Like I thought I changed the world. I got my 10,000 steps, threw up some weight, had a water. And then my other business partner from one of my other ventures, Moira Kusaba, who is like this, number one at this health and wellness. She did like a dry sauna, a dry brush, a red plunge, a cold plunge, a 5 plunge. And I'm just like, I thought I was killing it getting my steps, you know? So then it brings my energy back down. So in the ironic quest for more energy, we lose her. So we do all these things. And the problem is this. The problem is we spend time fixing the symptoms of our low energy. We have a coffee. We do whatever. Instead of focusing on how to fix the sources. Fixing our symptoms is short-term. Fixing the sources of energy, that's a long-term solution that can, over time, raise that baseline battery if you are in that 1 to 4 to being not all the time at a 5 or 6, but more likely than not. So I want you to think of a power grid. Think of a chart. Along the top of the power grid are the spaces we get energy. Okay, every environment has its own energy. Right now in this beautiful podcast studio, we have these majestic mountains. Like I'm literally getting energy from this spectacular view because it's a different vibe from California or Ohio or wherever.
You get it.
So along the top, you have physical and mental and spiritual and creative and social. There's all these places that we go to get energy, all these spaces. And I think most people know kind of what those are. On the left side of the power grid is the sources of our energy. And there are 3 places that are the first place you want to go if you're like, okay, I slept, I drank water, I got a sweat on. Why am I still treating my employees like this? Or why can't I galvanize? What's going on? And those 3 sources are super simple. If you do not have the source of a sense of control, a sense of agency, a sense of autonomy, a sense of being the captain of your own ship a little bit, fastest drainer to your battery you can imagine. This is why, by the way, network marketing works so well because we are redistributing a sense of agency, a sense of control of your destiny, right? The second area is connection. So if we don't feel connected to someone else or something bigger than ourselves, our batteries drain no matter how much we sleep. Again, network marketing. Link arms, good causes. And then finally, we have a sense of competence. And this is really, really important. And competence is not that you're number one of everything you do, right? But it's that you're basically completing challenging but doable tasks with immediate feedback. So again, you hit a goal, you level up. Good job, me. Cha-ching, cha-ching. So when these 3 elements are at play, which is your business model, which is why it crushes. It's an energizing business model, right? So if you want to start in this podcast thinking like, where do I even start? Where in your life are you missing a sense of control or connection or competence? Those are the 3 fast pass freeway entrances to unlocking what are your drainers. Is it a person, a place, a project, a pivot? Because there is something that's running in the background that is taking you down.
It's just pulling you down.
Right. And so the first step you can take to get more energy is not to drink more caffeine, which, I don't even drink caffeine. I don't need it. But it's not any of this. It's to identify a drainer and either delete it, renegotiate with it, modify it. But for right now, I can tell you, I know if you go through control, competency, and connection, right now, we have to move to a new place. And so I'm like, connection. I was so excited to come here today because I'm like, oh my God, we don't know anybody. I'm like,
who do I know?
I know the new scheme people. I'm going over there.
Who do we know?
But so I got a little, I don't even do anything after 2 p.m. ever, but I was so energized to come here because I was like, a sense of connection, right?
For sure.
Because that's what was draining me. So you can kind of go through this little exercise of your power grid.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And start to figure out kind of well, what's at the source of my drainer and not just try to cover up the symptom, which works for a little while. You can power through, power down, power up, but everyone, but that won't be your long-term solution to unlocking that essence of you.
I love that. I love that. And when you talk about the environment, and then you said, I usually don't do anything after 2 p.m. Do you find yourself being at your prime at different times? Are you more?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
I get up I wake up with my eyes wide awake at 5.
Okay.
Just bouncing off the
You're
walls.
one of those people.
Oh my God.
And what time do you power down?
Oh, I go to bed at 8 o'clock.
You do?
Yes. 8 p.m.
Do you read a book? Do you,
Yep.
you just read until you,
read a couple pages and then just,
and then you're out.
Beauty sleep.
That's great. Okay.
But I'm really boring because people like when we go to like
come on.
Yeah, and like on our New York friends and stuff, like, oh, we have a reservation for 7:30. I'm like, but my bedtime's at how can
it doesn't work.
So my husband and I, we always go out to dinner at like 5.
Yeah.
But my point is I know my rhythm. And since I was little, I've been an early bird, you know? And so like
that's what I was getting to is it's like we always try to identify it. It's like I follow different people and it's like you need, Wahlberg gets up at 4 a.m. to work out. So I started to do that and I'm like, that doesn't work for me. Like I can't do 4 a.m. 5 a.m. starts to get a little close for me, but I'm still groggy. 6 a.m. is my prime time. Like if I work out, it's from 6 to 7, then I'm charged up to the day. But I'll be honest, by 5, like, in fact, I was in a strategy meeting the other day and my general counsel, JC's like, man, like you're done. Like you were done 2 hours ago. And I'm like, I am done. Like I do better in the morning at like high energy, high creativity. Like I'm vibrating real high. And then I just like, I start to tank afterwards. But what I do find is to your point, it's then there's certain moments of, if I then connect with people. So to your point, if I then reconnect with someone, we have this conversation, it kind of powers me up enough to then get me through where I can like vibrate again at that higher, like we're using vibrate, but at a higher level and work. And so I think managing our power sources is really important as well, right? Through that process.
Correct. And like if I came on this show and I was Debbie Downer and low vibe and you were checking your watch, like when's this over? Because I'm a podcast host too, and not every guest makes you psyched, right? And so, but this is there, when it comes to the drainers in our life, right? So I think about it, I like to manage my energy like I manage my money. Okay. Because I think it's our most precious asset. Your energy is the way the world transacts with us, right?
No, for sure.
So we check our bank accounts and our calendars, we manage our time. But I think energy management is the new time management. Right?
No, 100%.
And so when you think about drainers, like you have fixed and discretionary. Fixed are the non-controllables. You get in an accident, you break your freaking neck on a ski slip. You couldn't control that.
Dumb.
You couldn't control that. But then your discretionary drainer was like probably that voice, that self-talk voice that was like, what if we never get back on the bike?
For sure.
What if this? And then you had to shut that down. You chose to delete that drainer and pick a new channel. That was a controllable where you're like, you know what my charger is? My charger is the Peloton. My charger is my family. My charger is I'm an athlete and this brings me joy. My charger is my buddies that I go riding with. Like you picked your chargers versus letting it drain you to the point where maybe you wouldn't be crushing PRs, doing the 3 mountain, ride or whatever. So, but that was a controllable. And everyone that is in a situation where they were dealt a hand, yes, it's heavy. I went through a terrible phase about 3 years ago. In 3 months, I lost my dog, my puppy dog, my love of my life. I don't have human kids, so she was hit by a car in front of me. It was awful. Awful.
Yeah. Worst kind of dog?
Worst of my life. Little Cavapoo. And was Stevie Nicks. And worst experience, trauma, grief, loss.
Terrible.
My dad got diagnosed with Parkinson's, my best friend. My husband, Hartman, went all in on this horrendous investment, lost like 2/3 of our everything. And then my 2 very best friends who lived 1 block away, and we were like family because they had family all over. They both moved. One moved to Texas, one moved to North Carolina, all within like 2 months. And so for the first time in my life, I was like, I'm not okay. But I couldn't control any of that, right? So yes, therapy. Yes, time. Yes, reading all the books and doing all the journaling. But at a certain point, like there's a moment where you have a mirror moment. For me, I'll never forget. We were at a pizza place and I was like eating bad and I wasn't working out. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, what are we going to do here? What's the call? Like, and it really is that dramatic. Like only you are going to decide, is this going to be your story or not? Like no one, Mel Robbins says, no one's coming to help. Like no one's coming. You have to drag yourself up out of that thing and make a choice. And we talk about this all the time in the personal development space. And it sounds so like to someone who's listening who's like, but I can't. It's like, but you have to. You have to because there's no other plan.
I think this is such an important lesson because I think anything in life, so we build ourselves into who we become. It's like fake it till you make it. But like I'm just a compilation of my parents, my coaches, my teachers, and some DNA somewhere, somehow, right? My life is a compilation of my actions, my environment, my decisions, and I don't know what percentage of it is, but outlook's a part of that too. And so I feel like, to your point around, either we are or we become, but it's up to us
100%.
so much of the
100%.
way, right, of what we do. So,
and it's not about like that you're denying that your feelings are valid. Like,
for sure.
Like, life is heavy, for sure. And when you can carve out any sense of reclaiming that agency with the smallest choices of choosing a charge or something so small, it might be getting out of bed.
Yeah.
But like, we have to find a way to find that way to make one teeny tiny step towards reclaiming who you know yourself to be.
I love that.
You have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes maybe the self-defeating concept or construct in our mind is that, well, maybe this is just who I am. Right. And that's when I think it becomes self-defeating, when we were knocked down enough that we just say, well, maybe this is my lot. Maybe this is what's meant to be. As opposed to, we're one, one of our co-founders says we're one decision away from a better life. And I think that's so true. It's like one decision pivots and then it's got to be another decision and another decision, but eventually we build the life we want. We can overcome whatever the challenge is. And so 100%. I think that is such an important principle that we all understand. And I think and I do want to get to your work, because we've already shot an hour here and I haven't even gotten to what you're doing next, because I want to go from, so this book, as I went through it, I love it. There's a ton of quotes, marked them up. You're kind of a big deal. The audacity to be there, to be who you are. And now I feel like your next turn, which you've referenced a little bit, is kind of getting to the source of energy, though, and your personal energy, your personal management. So tell us a little bit about the exam. What is the Big Energy Exam? Yeah. And you can find that on the link is
energized.com.
Energized.com.
Yep.
It's a pretty big research project that you've been running.
Yep.
With several PhDs over time, and I'm pretty excited about it. I love all these Enneagram personality tests. Yeah. So tell us about what you're doing, why you're doing it. Like there's a whole bunch of things you could be spending your time on, like writing your Big Deal number 2.
Yes.
But you're going into this. So what is it? What are you getting at here?
Yeah. So after all those things happened that I told you about a couple years ago, I turned to work as an outlet. Like, I'm just going to work myself. I don't want to face all this stuff. I'm just going to work till I feel better. Yeah. And I think a lot of us that come from like the high achieving family and when the going gets tough, the tough get going, all good stuff. And I wasn't paying attention to my body at all. Like, I was losing clumps of hair in the shower. I was having night terrors. I would find myself having to take a breath in the middle of a sentence. Wow. Like, I'd be on the treadmill at Orange Theory and like my heart rate was fine, but I couldn't get my breath. And so my body was screaming somatic signals at me. But I was like, nope, no time for this. We got to just push. So shocker, I ended up 1 week, I did 5 keynotes in 7 cities on 5 different topics. Oh, wow. Sales, marketing, AI, leadership, and then Big Deal Energy. And I was on a call with my team. I'll never forget it. It was about a year and a half ago on a Monday morning, our Monday morning team call. Everyone's on there, Brady Bunch Zoom call. And all of a sudden, I can't hear what someone's saying. And I can't catch my breath. Wow. And I can't hear them, and I can't see them, and I can't breathe. And what's happening? What? And I woke up in the ER. Wow. And my husband looked at me and I thought he was going to say I had a heart attack. And I had a good old fashioned panic attack, meltdown. Yeah. And I don't have anxiety. I mean, I have plenty of problems, but that's not like, I'm lucky, thank God. Yeah. And for me, it was a moment of like life or death, because so I tried powering through, went to the hospital. Then I had a keynote in Bali with a bunch of women. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to eat, pray, love, and fix everything. Blue moon, shaman, sacred river, like namaste. Like, like I'm all I eat is vegetables and my body's a temple. So I did that and shocker, it worked. But then I came back home like we do from vacation.
Short term, right?
Yes. Again, the power through, power down.
For sure.
And then I found myself in the same dang cycle of like either I am killing it at work. Yeah. And I am exhausted, or I'm doing nothing and I feel better, I'm not making anything happen. Yeah. Like, is it possible to be successful and stoked? Or am I just like a greedy millennial, like old millennial? Like, what on earth? Yeah. So I paused my entire business, which was really expensive and really scary. And I was like, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. And I spent my husband's entire boat budget that he'd been saving up for like 3, he's still not thrilled about it, poured it into research. And we basically we're like, tell us the secrets of people who do this. What we found was that the people who had the highest life satisfaction and the highest energy levels, they didn't use language about hang in there, power through. They didn't use language about recalibrate, recharge, power down. They used language about powering up, but powering up in a way that was personal to them. Know my strengths, honor my limits, trust myself. It was very, very Socrates, know thyself, hyper self. That was their edge. What we actually found was that on average, these people did about 32 energizing activities a week. So
I thought that was amazing. I read that.
And then when they went beyond that, their energy levels actually went down. So more was not actually more. So when I learned that, I recalibrated my business, my life, and I said, I'm going to do one topic, energy. I'm not going to do 5 topics, right? I'm going to change the way that I am scheduling my days. I'm not going to work after 2. Like I'm going to run hard till 2 and then it's bonus time. I made all these tweaks. Oh, I also did a really big cleanse of my my network.
Okay.
I went through all of the loyal, forever and ever friends where it was kind of a one way, where I was pouring in, but I didn't feel like I was getting it back. Kind of like love you, but like maybe just not gonna hang out as much. Right. So I did all these things.
So not deleting them from the phone. No, it was just like, okay.
Just like it's cool to hang out twice a year. I'm not gonna hang out every month. And then I tried to invite new people in my life. Like I met this new girlfriend named Lori Harder, who's amazing in my neighborhood. And I kind of sought out to rebalance my nerve. I stopped drinking caffeine, which I was drinking caffeine, stopped drinking that. So I rebalanced all of it, right? And what I found, fast forward to today, and it is unbelievable how much more energetic I feel, how hard I'm running. My company, thank God, is like doing great. We're traveling, but I don't have that like hair on fire feeling anymore. And what's crazy is that I think for all of us, if you can find a way to align more of your choices with your chargers, that's when you begin to actually have the effort. You don't have to push so much. You kind of like, I mean, it sounds woo-woo, but you kind of attract it. You're more of a magnet for the goods. And so the assessment that you're taking, the energy exam, is basically we uncovered 5 key energy types. But the energy type, really what it's about is it's about your unique chargers and drainers. So back to that power grid we talked about. So when you take the test, you'll uncover your shortcut. So these are the spaces and the sources that are best going to power up Ryan for the long term. So for example, I think that you are probably a kinetic.
There's generative, kinetic, and I'd like you to clarify what is generative, what is kinetic, what's synergistic, responsive, and rigorous. Those are the 5 types, right?
That is the 5. So, I think that you are, I think you're kinetic.
Okay.
I think. So
movement based?
Yes. So kinetic energy is the faster the motion, the more the energy. Right? Sure. They're typically big leader energy. They're drivers. They do really well under pressure. They're cool under pressure. They like competition. They like keeping score. They like new challenges. The more they move, the more stoked they are. Right. So if kinetics are feeling drained, they need to move. Right.
Yes. 100%.
Right. But so that's not like groundbreaking advice, right? Because everyone's like, oh my God, it's 3:00. And if your vibe is low, take a walk. A walk is not a walk. Is not a walk. A walk for a kinetic would be a walk that is timed. Maybe a jog. Maybe a sneaky plank in between. Maybe like faster than somebody else. Like it's an aggressive walk. It's a competitive walk, right? The second one's synergistic. And a lot of people in this industry, network marketing, are synergistic because they're connected to either something bigger than themselves or others, which is a combo of this industry, right? So synergistics, if you're synergistic, you need to go for a walk, and you either need to be plugging into whatever your belief system is, like you're praying, you're meditating, you're getting a little, tapped into whatever your jam is, or you need to call a friend and be chatting away while you're walking. That's what's going to actually power you up. Now, generative is the creatives. They're like they are like, if everyone's going left, they have to go right. Like they're like, what's the weird funky? They're Lady Gagas of the world, right? So their walk is like, I'm going to like walk, but also take amazing photos with like this artsy background with like the blurred thing, right? Or I'm going to like create, you know, something. I'm going to create a playlist while I'm walking that's like no one's ever heard before. The best playlist. They're creators. So responsive are the extreme empaths. Those are your deep feelers.
Interesting.
If they are walking, they should be walking, probably listening to like talk therapy, calming music. They're the ones that like should not be checking their email and like looking at all their text messages because they need boundaries because they're deep feelers. And then your rigorous are your practical, I love a system, I'm allergic to chaos. That's your one that is like trying to find the most efficient route in the exact amount of time that they've mapped out ahead of time, listening to a podcast about how to untangle a very complicated issue about nuclear physics. Like that's your rigorous, right? So what's interesting about this is the reason that people get stressed out by trying to chase more energy is because we look at this power grid of all the spaces you can get it and all the sources we talked about, right? Control, competence, connection, and then physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, creative. We look at this power grid as humans, and these are all the places we power up. So when we try to run at all of them, that's when we get all the things overwhelmed, the anxiety. So this is a scientific shortcut to how you personally power up best, because how you power up is as distinct as your DNA. What you get excited about, I probably also get excited about, but like maybe not everybody, you know? So it's just a nice way to sort of, it's a refreshing, like do less approach that really worked for me. And we just rolled it out actually at Google. We trained their whole sales organization on this. And everyone is just saying like, with our constant connectivity and surviving the pandemic, if one more guru tells me to do 100,000 things, I'm out. I can't, I don't have the capacity for that anymore. And so what I tried to provide was, okay, yes, if you can do it all, like my business partner Moira does all of it, great. Love that for you, Moira. But if you're someone who is just like, can you just give me a shortcut to the one thing? This helps you understand what your jam is.
Get there. I love it. And I think it ties back to what you said at the beginning of the energy discussion, which was those who tend to be happier are self-aware. And this tool kind of enables that, right? Is that guy like help us understand ourselves and not try to be everyone else, which maybe connects to the beginning of the discussion, which is you have different role models for different situations, different people that you relate to, superheroes, you know, whatever. But in the end, it kind of has to be authentic to us, right? And it needs to speak my language, my energy language, in that right way. So what do you plan to do with this? And I want to maybe, as we're closing up here, because I loved something that I read about you, and I can't remember the source, so forgive me, but you made the comment somewhere in an interview, or they made the comment about you in an interview, that you actually prefer smaller middle school type stages, rather than these large arenas, because you can have real impact on next generation around kind of the basics of energy confidence. It seems like while you're a public speaker, you are employed by a lot of larger companies, Google, I saw Disney. You seem to really like to connect down at a smaller level, But so I want to kind of maybe wrap it up to say, what do you want to do next with this study that you're doing, the PhD stuff, where you're at? You want to focus on energy. Where are you going to take this? And what do you want to do in the next 10 years with it?
So the middle school stages, we launched a program called Big Energy Live for middle school gals who, I was bullied in middle school. I hated middle school. And so for me, I feel like I didn't even have Instagram. And so what keeps me up at night, I don't have children of my own. I'm a godmother 7 times over. I have countless nieces and nephews. I'm fun Auntie E. I'm holding it down, trust me. But, you know, what really keeps me up at night is thinking about this constant input of filters 100%. And comparison. And like,
100%.
It's not a new conversation. So I'm not like, you know, this isn't like a groundbreaking new topic, but I literally get so upset about it and I don't know what to do about it. And so, so for us, we launched this program where we go into middle schools and we just help them to unlock their big energy. We help them to manage their energy. And really what it's about is just, it's a call to conscientiousness around input. And how we process the inputs they're getting that are showing up in their outputs, right? So that's the program. We launched it. It's really exciting.
I love that.
But then here's the thing, right?
I love that.
But like we're modeling it for this next generation. So to answer your question, the next 10 years, I want to have 1 million people that have taken the energy exam, that have made one choice to either delete a drainer or choose a charger that has helped them.
I love that.
To have that positive, energetic contagion at home or at work, just a little bit. Because it catches fire, man. It's like those shows. It's like, what's that show where the one kind deed? But it's like, I really believe that, especially in the age of AI, where we're getting automated out of our skill sets. Like, our last edge is empathy, creativity, intuition, adaptability. Those are energy heavy skills. So from a professional standpoint, that's our edge that we need to learn how to double down on quick. And scrolling away our self-awareness
killing it.
Is killing it. We cannot compete on competency with computers. So let's double down on what we can compete on, which is being humans. Good, energetic humans.
For sure.
And then personally, it's because, you know, we want to live like juicy, alive lives where we're like present.
For sure.
And so, and I think that's like really, like, you know, my grandmother Nana always says, like, whoever has the most fun wins. You know, and when you're an ambitious achiever or a high performer, sometimes we forget about fun.
No,
there's no energy for fun. So I feel like if we could bring a little bit more like fun back into it, that's my goal. I want to start a conversation. And
1 million is not going to be hard. Like you're addressing something, in my view. When you see 2.7 million people on the Meta platform alone, right, a third of the world's population. And I had a note where my daughter was struggling with. She came to me and she's like, "Dad, things aren't going well." She was getting ready to graduate early, and she's like, and I said, Ava, why don't you because I noticed she was always, whenever it was almost like any anxious moment, the reaction is pick up my phone and start scrolling, which is exactly the wrong. It's like having a fire in your house and going and running it, getting the lighter, right? And so I was like, what if, like, Ava, I'll pay you. This is great. I'll pay you to stay off social media for 1 month. Like, and it will be one pair of Nike shoes per month to do it. I will tell you, I haven't bought the Nike shoes for her. She has found so much value. Her grades went up. Her relationships went up. Our relationship went up. And she hasn't even asked for the Nike. Like she just hasn't asked it. It's been that valuable for her. Now, she's gone back to utilizing it, but I hope what she took out of that experience was, I'm running into an anxious environment. I'm feeling anxious and I'm running and putting gasoline on that anxiety by looking at it. And we do not understand the social impact that this is having, or the psychological impact on our society right now. While there's plenty of good and there's plenty of great things that we see about it, I think you're doing something amazing. And I think 1 million people, we need 1 billion people on this platform. Okay. So however we can help with this, I mean, we'll publish this, we'll get it out to our people. I think what you're doing is right. I wasn't going to go here, but can we go 5 more minutes?
Let's do it. All day, let's go.
You told me earlier the pink, and by the way, pink is both for male, but you said, I asked you about pink. I said, is pink your thing? Because I've heard, I can read the quotes about you talking about pink. So, but you said, hey, it's the best-selling book cover. Pink is because it's such an unusual book cover.
It's the most rare book color.
It's the most rare book color. Yes. But what it also, a lot of the book is about, and I have to admit, I was feeling a little funny reading the book because I kind of felt like maybe it wasn't written for men. like maybe that was part of it. And yet I loved the book. And so my question for you is, how much of what you're talking about, like, truly, do you feel applies to men as well as women? And like how much of this?
Okay.
Because
I love that this is your low key softball closing question, because I could talk about this.
No, I know. That's why I said I don't know how we wrap it up in 5. But
we're like landing the plane. You're like psyched.
And I can keep going, but Hartman, I feel bad for him. The guy's driving around waiting for this thing. I want to know. Like, I really do want to know, because everything you talk about, and I can give you all these quotes. And it's like, be a badass. I'm like, yeah, man. Like, I'll do that. Yeah. And I'm going through, like, haters hate, and I'm like, yeah, haters hate. And I'm reading it, and then I'll get to, like, you really, and all the stories are female, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe this isn't for me. And I'm like, but I feel this way. So, all right, how do you see that?
Okay, so full disclosure, I am a raging feminist who loves men.
Awesome.
I love to see men win. My business mentors, my entire career, have always been dudes, always. I mean, I have my 3 business mentors who live in Orange County are literally the most generous guys with their time and with their advice and with their connections.
Yeah.
Like, so I am not one of these like, I'm all about girl power, but I believe it's like, it's an us thing, right?
For sure.
It's not combative.
100. And by the way, I didn't feel that way in the book.
Okay, good.
At all.
So that's my preface. And
yeah. Oh. Go ahead.
Are you still listening? So as a keynote speaker, typically, here's what happened. So I got hired by a large Fortune 100 to come in and train their sales organization, legacy business model, heavily male dominated, average age 55. I'm wearing a pink dress. I'm like 40 and I'm from California, and so what happened was I was on the call and we're planning for the event, and they're talking about the speaker lineup, and there's some pretty heavy hitters, whatever. And they go, we're just so glad that we got some diversity on the lineup this year. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Who'd you guys get?
You are the diversity? Yes.
And I was like, no, I'm not high-fiving. I was like, you're kidding, right? Like, I am like a very blessed, very privileged, like white woman from Orange County. Like, surely.
Who, by the way, did corporate
this is
sales.
Not yes.
Like, I'm part of you.
So I realized in that moment, like, that every time I'm on stage, it's me and it's a bunch of guys on stage. Like, there's just not a lot of heavy hitting female business speakers. And so part of me is like, what can I do to get more women like on stage, starting companies, raising money?
For
and
sure.
It's not that I don't want men to as well. I just think they have enough help already. Because here's the problem. So my business mentor is in Orange County, right? So one of them in particular, he is like, he started auction.com. Like he sold it to Google Ventures. It's 10X. He's flying his BJ. He's big time. Yeah. So, but what's interesting is he's been my mentor for years. And like, so we're at a restaurant, right? We have double dates with our spouses. We've all gone, like, I'm like, dude, like I punch him on the shoulder. Like we're buds, right? Yeah. But when you see him mentoring me at a bar and I'm sitting there and the visual is like, oh, younger woman, older guy. There's like this judgment around it, right? Even though that's not our story.
That's not the relationship.
If there's a guy my age who's being mentored, everyone's like, look at him, helping him out. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So it's just a baked in bias.
Societal bias.
That like less than 1% of us are keynote speakers with business books. But we just don't have enough. Yeah. Like, we don't have enough to, like, even, like, the keynote speaker careers that I emulate, Brendan Burchard, Ed Milet, like, it's a lot, Mel, of course, but we just need more gals in these positions. And so I wrote the book for women because I feel like we don't have enough business books that are talking to us.
I love it. And let me say this, So I'm a father of 2 daughters, and we have this conversation all the time that I'm like, hey, Napierski's a good last name, right? Like, I want them to slay as much as they want to slay, and whatever we can do to help them. What I find interesting, and so I just picked up a book. I was reading Peter T. his Outlive book.
Yes, I'm reading that right now.
So the final chapter is phenomenal. You have to stay through the final chapter.
I'm in the very beginning.
You'll love it. Okay. You'll love it. He gets into, so I won't spoil it, but he gets into his mental health journey. So this final chapter, and he talks about it, and he talks about a book that I just downloaded. I haven't read it yet, but I've read about the book, which is I Don't Want to Talk About It. And it's all about how men don't want to talk about certain aspects of our journey. That we're raised in a way to not think about this. So as I was reading this, I felt like it was a little bit of my mother helping me to understand myself in a way that I don't think society allows men to understand. About themselves. I don't think society's built to do that. So I think there's great, and I love that you wrote it as you did. I think there's great value as well for men, because it's the side of the stuff that we don't talk about as much. But the way you put it in the book, I thought was phenomenal. And I think it's highly relevant, highly applicable to men as well. And especially if we have diverse workforces. It helps me understand better because I was going to quote that, but you said it right at the beginning in the study. We'll end here, but wait for it. The top 3 positive traits for women: beautiful, kind, and compassionate. And the top 3 for men were leader, ambitious, and strong. And then you look at that and say, so why isn't a female leader, ambitious, strong? And why can't a man be beautiful, kind, compassionate? Correct. Like it's all about doing those things. So I loved it.
That fear, thank you so much. And like that fear of expressing as a man, like, that you're not supposed to cry. You're not
Right.
taught to show empathy. It's
Right.
you get a negative reaction growing up, like, be a man, toughen up, all this stuff. And there's a lot of fear that I think I'm trying with this book a little bit to just assuage some of the fear. I mean, even going back to my story about the optic of an older man mentoring a younger woman, there's a fear of the most successful guys at the highest echelons of finance and business and boards. They're afraid to mentor younger women because of the optic, or because of, it's like there's fear on both sides. They're afraid to mentor us. They want to bring us up because they're feminists with daughters, but they're nervous.
Yeah.
But we need them because they're in the boardroom and they're the one that knows the guy that can pull the trigger to get it done, you know? And so I think what's really beautiful about what you were articulating with your daughters, and thank you for the praise on this book, is like you are walking the example that we need more of. Like you're raising your daughters to be strong. They're athletes. You're appreciating a book that's written targeting to women that you picked up lessons from. I mean, we just need more C-level men that are showing other guys like, look, this isn't scary. Like, we can do this.
Yeah,
like, we're
sure.
better together. I mean,
No,
we're better.
100%.
We're better when half of us are women and half are men, and we're teaming up and we're balancing each other out and we're learning from each other. Like, I love how I talk about this book I call it a duditude.
Yeah.
And a duditude is, I love how men, like, if the project fails or the client cancels or the venture doesn't go through, guys are so awesome because they'll be like, you know what? This is a huge generalization, but they'll say, it wasn't the right time, or like, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
Like, they're never like, it was me.
Right.
Which is so healthy because separating who you are from what you do is a huge power move.
Yeah.
Women are like, what did I do? I'm blaming myself. I'm recashing the whole thing. And so I'm like, ladies, duditude.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are not sitting up all night worrying about what they did
Yeah.
wrong. They're like, hey, we gave it our best shot. We swung for the fences. You win some, you lose some. Let's move on.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to learn. And then the vice versa is these high-powered guys like you yourself are like, wow, I can actually learn about, like, interesting. I never thought about allowing that kind of vulnerability and empathy. So there's lessons to trade on both sides. And I just think that this is a great conversation.
And I'm even exposing maybe too much of myself, but maybe I need to duditude because I internalize a ton of stuff. And I'm always like, man, why did I not think that thing all the way through? Why did I not predict that happened? Was it me? Would somebody have else made a different decision, right? So that's where I think it's really helpful. So just putting it out there.
All right,
I think it's a phenomenal book. I think it's phenomenal. Erin, you have been amazing. You've spent more time. Hartman's driving around. Tell him thank you. And we're going to have you back if you'll ever come back. But really just appreciate all the good you're doing. And this empowerment movement that you're on and this middle school movement, I think is one of the best things you could do. And this whole big energy exam, go out there, take the course. Let's help you get to 1 billion people taking this in the next 10 years. You'll change the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate you so much. That means a lot.
So
Thank
good.
you so much.
So good.
Appreciate
Good
it.
to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.